Hello everyone to Arrowcraft Archery. In today's episode I just wanted to show you my setup to practice archery at home, and the idea for this came about during COVID, where I could no longer go to the archery club and practice there. So I was in need of designing a way to practice archery at home in a way that was safe, and that it will also allow me to have some fun with it. So I'll just show you the whole setup, and then I'll just go through some of the little things that you might need if you want to do something similar, and some comments on what I found is necessary, useful or not. Okay, so the main thing that I use for the setup is a winch. I got this one from Amazon, not very expensive and nothing complicated at all. Now this one, they tend to come with a metal wire, which is too rigid for our purposes here, so I just replaced that with a paracord, which is way more flexible. I also strapped this to the tree, not to harm the tree, which means I had to mount the winch to a block of wood and a piece of wood again, so I don't mount it directly onto the tree. Now on the upper part, I'll show you here, what I use is another piece of wood strapped to the tree as well, and what is acting as a pulley there is just the hub of a bicycle wheel. So this is at least 4 meters high, because our net is 3 meters high, and then when I'm not using it, just to keep the paracord in place, I'll just put it in a hook here. Now on the other side of the garden, 8 or 10 steps away, I have the other high point, which consists basically of an extra wooden beam attached to the fence. And just like on the other side, we have a pulley here for this end of paracord that will join the other side. And when we are not using it, some anchor points here to keep it in place. I'll just go ahead and put it all up for you guys to see. Here I'm just unlocking the winch so it moves freely. That allows me to pull the paracord as much as I want and lace it through the ring holes of the net and just attach it to the other side. Once that's done, it's just a matter of winding up the paracord using the winch. Okay, well, as you can see, that's as easy as it takes. It really takes 5 minutes to put it up, and to take down it just takes just pretty much about the same. So now what you're looking at is well, here I just have a sort of like a target thing. It's nothing else other than a 10-inch inner tube for a bike with a bit of color. Now this net in particular is a professional net. I think it's 350 grams per square meter, so presumably quite heavy duty, but as I'll explain later, it really isn't purpose specific in my opinion. And since I am into zombie stuff, what I did, I just sprayed this zombie target directly onto the net, which I think is quite convenient as well. Now, if I were to do this again, I probably would spray the target slightly higher, because that beam up there is 4 meters, just like the net, which is 4 meters also. But what you want is you want a portion of the net to rest on the ground. You don't want it hanging entirely, because then it would provide less resistance to the arrows. But if I were to do this again, I think the spread of the target could have been higher, pretty much where the inner tube is. And as I mentioned here, is we use 2 ends of paracord. So this one that goes on the pulley here, but we don't wind, it stays static. and the other part that we joined that goes all the way to the winch and allows us to raise or lower the net. Other than that, it's just operating the winch. Once there is unlock, so it would allow me to, if I let this go, then you just bring the whole thing down. It just brings it all down, and it's just as easy as that to bring it down and fold it up again. Now most of these nets, if you buy it already made, will come with these ring holes or eyelets, I think they call them, which presumably you could just lace the whole paracord through those eyelets directly. However, since I was using a carabiner to make it easier when I'm attaching the two ends of paracord, I figured it would be better for me to create these extra loops with a paracord, because then the carabiner would go easier through them. Initially, I thought I was going to be undoing these loops all of the time, so I added these extra tiny little paracord carabiners to make that process easier. But ever since I did this, I haven't really touched those, so not necessary at all. The other thing that we can see here is a sort of double paracord, one green and one black. I'll remove it here for you guys to see better. Now this end of the paracord is the one that goes all the way back to the winch, and this black piece of paracord is directly attached to the other end of our anchor point. And as you can see here, that black paracord is attached only to that loop on the net, the last loop. And we can always put an S-type carabiner on this end to facilitate the attachment and detachment of the net. And this of course is giving us an anchor point to keep the net flat when we pull it from the other side. Given the weight of the fabric, it would have tendency to wrinkle at the center, so we'll avoid that by having that anchor point and keeping the net straight. So if I remove this, the whole thing comes loose because we were only attaching it to the one loop on the net. So here it's more visible. That carabiner is attached only to that loop on the eyelet of the net. Now the other paracord, this one, is the one that goes all the way back to the winch. So I'll just put this back and wind up a little bit the winch, just to show you what I mean by the usefulness of having an anchor point on one end of the net. Because of how the paracord goes, yeah, the fabric tends to fold towards the center, and if I move this end, I can stretch it, but it's gonna keep on moving all the way along unless I add a sort of an anchor point, and that's what this is gonna be doing. So this is what I use this extra anchor point for. So the moment I clip that, it's always gonna keep that fixed, and then I can pull it from the other end to keep the whole fabric stretched. So if I click it there, then it's stretching it, yeah, all the way. And then that means doesn't matter how much I pull from that end, there's no sliding along the paracord anymore. And then once that's done, I can finish pulling that up. Now this winch is it has two locking systems. So one when you're winding it, so if I let it go, it's not gonna go crazy and unwind. Now if I move this to the center, it's gonna be as in the current neutral, so it can move freely both directions, and if I move this lock all the way up, then it's locking on the other direction. So not something that I personally use for this setup, but the point is, if you're looking at similar winches, it's good to have this locking system, because once you start pulling all the fabric up, the weight of the fabric, if you let go of the handle, you can sort of hurt yourself. So it's good to find the winch that has the locking system. So here is free. So it would just like unwind now with the weight. The moment I lock it, then I can freely let go, and it's gonna stay locked. And that's it. Now bear in mind, with this setup, what I do is I use bolt arrowheads, because this is a back net arrow stopper, which if I were to shoot an arrow with a point head, at least using the poundage that I usually use, is actually gonna go through. And as a matter of fact, I tested that, and the first time I shoot an arrow with a point, it went right through it. So this is a low, I was aiming low, so just to make sure that, you know, I wasn't gonna have any stray arrow killing anybody or anything like that. But even though this is a professional net and it should potentially have stopped a point arrow, well, it's not an armory net. So something definitely to keep in mind if you're going to practice at home. Do not use pointy arrows, just use blunt arrows. Any fabric, you don't need to go for a professional fabric. Any piece of cloth that it's slightly thick, it's going to stop a blunt arrowhead. It won't stop any pointy heads, just as the professional back net stopper doesn't stop pointy arrows, at least not if you're shooting heavy bows. So you don't need to go professional on this. I did, because I had tried some other fabrics in the past, and the arrows were going through, and it just took me a lot of different trials and errors to realize that what I needed to do was to switch to using blunt arrowheads as opposed to pointy arrows. And for that, you don't need a professional back net stopper. In the past, I have actually used some other type of cheaper fabric as a back net stopper, and it works for blunt arrowheads. So please do keep that in mind. One more thing that I've used is an extra line of paracord to suspend a target. So I'll set it up and show you. And so there it is, that extra piece of cord, which I'll basically set up in front of where the net goes. It goes all the way back to the other side as well. And that allows me to have these sort of targets hanging in mid-air. Just makes it a little bit more challenging as well, and more fun. Sometimes I place some extra targets in front just to work with different distances. It's a really good thing about practicing with 3D targets as opposed to just using the traditional paper target. And the reason for that is because we have what is called stereoscopic vision, and so we have two points of perspective, and that allows us to, that gives us some depth, some perception of depth. So when it comes to instinctive shooting, instinctive archery, we are actually better at shooting 3D targets than we are at shooting 2D targets, as in the paper, because it's natural. Basically, that's what you would find in the natural environment. Alright, I'll just do a bit of shooting for you, and so you more or less see how that works. The other thing I used is just a normal ground quiver, which I made with a piece of PVC piping, kind of a big one. And basically what I did was to put a bit of cement at the bottom, put some legs, just a bit of cement just to weigh it down, and then I just use my blown arrows. I played around with different distances, so I'm constantly simulating that instinctive aiming as opposed to just having always the same fixed target, which is okay for consistency. Definitely it is the way that Olympic archery style endorses it, but I don't think it is it's as fun. I think it's also when you work with different distances, you're making sure that the way you handle the bow, the way you aim is more natural. It's going to be more second nature to you. So that's the way I like doing it. And for that, it's very easy to do. You just work with different distances, and this is stuff that you could introduce if you have a setup at home where you can play around a little bit with that. A lot of archery clubs, at least here in England, wouldn't necessarily like that, because that means you're going to be shooting different distances. You're going to have different backstops, and when you have other people shooting besides you, that can be a little bit of an issue. Now, the other thing that I didn't mention is that because we are shooting blunt arrowheads onto fabric, and you're not gonna have as many arrows broken upon impact, whether you hit the target or you miss the target, especially if you're missing the target and whatever's behind is hard surface, you're gonna be breaking arrow after arrow, and that is an issue that you would not have if you simply use a fabric as your target itself, not just as a backstopper. That's exactly what I did by putting targets in front, or by even spraying the target directly onto the net. It just works for me. Anyway, just in case that's something you want to try it out at home. And I'll leave you with a round of shooting and also the takedown of the whole setup. Once again, thanks for watching, and don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe. It really supports people who do not make money with these videos, like myself. Have a good week, and I'll see you in the next video.